Welcome back to the Mind Body Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Bellante, and today is Motivation Monday. I am really excited to be here because I want to talk about blind trust and what it actually looks like to create with blind trust instead of trying to manage everything all the time. So if this sounds like you, I am excited to speak about this today. So let's get started. Welcome to the Mind Body Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Bellante. And this show is about what happens when you stop separating your life, your work, and your well-being and start leading all of it from truth. Each episode will explore the connection between your thoughts, your body, and your business so you can create a life and success that actually feels good. Let's get started. Okay, so good morning, Royce. And when I say creativity here or creating here, good morning, Michelle. I'm not just talking about creating as like art or craft. Okay, I'm talking about creating all of that plus life and business. Hey, Pam. And our frustration around this creativity does not come from lack of ideas. Are you with me here? Hi, Lynn. We have tons of ideas. In fact, we have so many ideas that we don't even know which way to go. You know, I always say squirrel, 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 squirrel. Like there's so many ideas. And, you know, most of the people that listen to the Mind Body Business Podcast are entrepreneurs. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur, but I want to bring this up because this means that we have some form of discipline, right? But the frustration around creativity, whether it's life, business, art, craft, whatever, actually comes from standing outside the process and trying to control everything. And what I want to say, and what we all know, but we tend to forget, is that creation itself doesn't come through massive thinking or perfectionism. It actually comes from present moment engagement. Would you agree with me? Thank you, Royce. Thank you for sharing. Would you agree with me? When we are creating, in the process of creating itself, we are engaged with the present moment, right? We aren't overthinking everything. We aren't telling ourselves we're not good enough. We aren't comparing ourselves to somebody else. Would you agree with me? Tell me in the comments if you're here live. And once we understand that creation itself doesn't, come from overthinking, that it comes through engagement of the creation process itself. Once you understand that, our entire experience with creation can change. And when creation of our business, of a product that's coming out, of a new membership group, of just art that we're doing itself, right? Or something that we've really, really wanted to try, but we haven't allowed ourselves. When it becomes something that we oversee, like we're almost like, standing outside of ourselves, having to oversee everything. When it becomes something that we have to track all the time, let me just make sure that this is on track, right? Or something that we have to optimize, or it has to be perfect before we can even do anything or go further, it loses responsiveness. And what I mean by that is, like, if you don't begin the process and get into the process of creation, you can't understand how it's going to go. We try to plan everything out. We try to make everything predictable. And if we're trying to make everything predictable, like the predictable future, it's going to look like the past. Does that make sense? So if we're trying to oversee it, trying to track it, trying to optimize it, it stops answering back. And like, think about this. I love this with art journaling in general, where you have no idea what you're creating and you just respond to the last thing that you put into the journal, right? So you can think about that with whatever you're creating, business, life, whatever it is. We have to begin it and be inside of it in order for it to respond where it should go next. And that's when we start to feel disconnected, even though we're spending a ton of time thinking about it. Creation is alive when you are inside of it. And action and implementation and exploration and expression, they're not strategies. These are the ways that we actually enter the creative process itself. And this process is where information becomes available to you. When you engage directly with this process, again, whatever it is, if it's your business, if you're just creating a project or a canvas or, your life in general, clarity begins to form. And when I say like life in general, it's February 2nd today. And I know that a lot of people make New Year's resolutions. Well, this year I'm going to do blank. And what I want to ask is like, where are you at with that right now? Have you participated in the change? Because when you participate in the present moment of the change, clarity begins to form. And this is where blind trust lives. Blind trust is not a belief system. It's actually just choosing engagement without waiting for certainty to arrive first. And sometimes we have that intuition that we need to do something and we still don't do it. We try to plan it and make it, and then we get to it and we're like, for me, it's really showing up as my yoga practice right now. So I was certified to be a yoga instructor in 2005-ish. I don't know, something like that. And I mean, I was full on like being yoga for years and years and years and years and years. I used to teach 5 classes a week. Like I was in incredible physical shape. And then I had my heart stint come in. I had a horrible year. I don't need to go through all of that. But the moral of the story here is I stopped practicing yoga. And every time I tried to practice, I would resist against it. I would do it, but it didn't feel fluid. It didn't feel like flow. It didn't feel like blind trust that this is what I needed to get back on track, right? And so when I, tried to become or be the person that did yoga, I was placing all of my memories from the past couple of years where I didn't practice. And I didn't believe in it again, right? And so this is why it's so hard to change, even though I had a time in my life where I was practicing every single day, teaching classes, like really great physical health. I still was not allowing myself to be that again. And as many times, oh, that's sad, Royce. As many times as I tried to get back there, I am choosing to be the person I was the day before that did not practice yoga. And if we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had yesterday, no wonder it's been hard for me to get back into yoga. I am not being the person who gets up and does yoga every day. So guess what I've been doing? I've been changing the predictable future. So you can't change by being the person that you were yesterday. You have to be a totally different person. So when I'm getting out of bed in the morning now, I go straight to my yoga mat. And it feels like a different experience because I am choosing to engage with it without waiting for certainty that this is the right move. And practice matters of anything because repetition reveals what thinking cannot. Experimentation matters because it produces feedback that all of the planning in the whole wide world can never give you. Right? You can't get feedback by doing nothing. Is that correct? Do you hear that? Do you agree with me? And each interaction gives whatever it is that you're trying to create a chance to show you where to move next. Because refinement happens after engagement. And this is why imitation disrupts coherence. Because when you copy somebody that inspires you or something that inspires you, you borrow someone else's resolution. So you can begin by copying, but if you're always producing the same thing that whatever it is that you're copying, you're never going to get any traction from that. And it's never going to feel totally great inside. Maybe the first time you're like, wow, I can do this. I created this or I made this, right? But someone else's resolution is not the resolution for you. You step into their finished shape instead of entering your own unfolding. Does that make sense? And it may all look fine on the surface, but you don't feel connected to it because you actually skip the phase where meaning forms for you. So inspiration itself is meant to activate movement. It's meant to bring you into your own process, right? That's exploration and play, no matter what it is that you're creating. So authorship restores alignment because it keeps you inside of the work rather than like, you're working here and then you're beside it, like overseeing it all the time. And that process itself where you're overseeing, overthinking, comparing all of that, it feels destabilizing, right? This is what I love to call the valley of bewilderment. And I sat in this valley. Right? This is like the bottom of the black hole. This is the valley of bewilderment. And this is where confusion keeps showing up. You don't have, this reliable map to get you out. I'm thinking of like those pickaxes to like climb out, right? You don't have a map to get out. How you get out is taking the action and seeing if it works. And if it doesn't work, then you got to try something else. That's refining after engagement, right? So choose the direction and go with the direction. And if the direction doesn't work, you're allowed to pivot. I mean, if you followed me for a while, like, look at how many times I've pivoted. And I'm still pivoting. There's a massive growth period that I'm going through right now. And I know that I'm still not where I need to be. I felt the intuition that I need to be incorporating ocean therapy and forest therapy into my retreats and into the ways that I teach. So I'm so excited. I have a retreat with my next level people, loves of my life in Florida in a couple weeks. And I'm so excited to do and practice in my first ocean therapy. I'm going to call it a ritual maybe with them. I'm so excited. And again, I have no idea if this is going to be amazing or not. I think it's going to be, right? But unless I implement it and start doing it, how will I ever know? I am using blind trust to follow my intuition. And it just, the work, the creativity, the life, the business, it responds to the consistency of you being present in it, not trying to manage it all the time. Does that make sense? Tell me if you're here. Because our journey that we are intuitively creating, it doesn't resolve through thought and insight alone. Of course, we need thought and able to create to be able to create it, right? But the journey actually resolves through use. We got to do it. We got to see. And we're really just tuning inside instead of the three-dimensional outside world. And that is blind trust in practice. Here and yes, right, Michelle? And I'm so excited to that Michelle is going to be at that retreat, and she's going to I know she's so amazing. She's going to give me feedback on this ocean therapy that will enhance the way I practice. I know because she's going. Right? And the people who are meant to be there, the people who are going and being there, they're meant to be there, right? And this is for them so that I can get that practice in use. Right? So this way of creating applies to, hey, Shannon, to life and to business just as directly as it applies to art or craft. Michelle says, no pressure. Because life responds the same way creation does. It organizes itself through engagement. It clarifies through contact. And direction forms when you participate instead of standing back and trying to decide if it's the right move ahead of time. You will never know unless you do it. And it's okay to make mistakes. Like you've heard, fail faster. Okay, fail faster. Do it differently next time. And businesses work this way too, even though most of us are taught the opposite. We're taught to plan first, to validate first, to map everything out. And what actually happens is this separation, is this distance. And we're distancing ourselves from our own intuition. And when our business becomes something that you have to manage from the outside, it starts behaving like something rigid and unresponsive, and you don't know where to go. And that's when your throat feels closed and tight, and where you're like, it was me. Like, I'm so confused. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. That valley of bewilderment, right? And when you actually just take action and you work from inside of it, the business becomes dynamic again. Information shows up because you're doing the things. And decisions become clearer because you start responding to what's real instead of your predictable future. If you have a predictable future, it's going to look like the past. So blind trust shows up here as action without you having to overcalculate every step. Take that deep breath. Let go of all that anxiety. Am I doing this right? And be in the moment. Be in the creativity that your intuition is telling you is right for you. And we don't want to confuse certainty with safety. Certainty feels comforting, but it doesn't create movement. All it does is create the past. Engagement creates movement. Movement creates feedback. Feedback creates direction. And that valley of bewilderment exists probably even more in our business, just as it does in like creative work. And because the next way of operating, this person that you need to be in order to create the life, the business, the art that you want, you're not here yet because you're thinking the same thoughts that you were thinking yesterday instead of the thoughts that can take you to where you want to be. Right? And it feels so disorienting because we expect answers to just arrive when we overthink. Like, I'm just going to think this to death. I just got to figure this out. I got to sit down and figure this out. I got to work this out. I need spreadsheets. I mean, blah, 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 right? And then you're just spinning in the valley of bewilderment, right? And this is where comparison becomes tempting too, because we start then to watch how other people operate. We borrow their structure. And on the surface, it might feel efficient, but underneath it creates massive separation between you and your intuition. And you end up operating inside someone else's resolution instead of allowing your own resolution to form through your own experience. What if this isn't right for you? Or what if it's right, but it's just a little off and you prefer doing it this way instead? Coherence returns when you become the author. So direction stabilizes attention, attention stabilizes action. So keeping your attention in the present moment when you are creating, instead of comparing, instead of overthinking, and then creation stops feeling segmented. And your work and your business and your life begin responding to the same principle. Engagement, being in the present moment, taking the action, exploring, it replaces hesitation. Participation replaces observation. You're just doing it instead of looking at, the myriad of ways that it can go wrong. So that's what we do, right? The process becomes something you're inside of rather than something you're trying to control. When you trust that participation, clarity keeps showing up and you keep getting inspired to grow. And sometimes you grow really super fast. When you stay engaged, the refinement begins to happen more naturally. And you start to see it like, oh, I'm seeing how this is coming together. And when you remain inside this process, your work, your life, your business, it continues to respond. And that's how creation becomes a lived process across everything you're building. So, if I want you to leave with one realization, it's this. Notice how often you try to control what you're creating. And as I tell you that, how does that hit? How does that hit right now in your body? Notice how often you try to control what you're creating. And it might not be in every area of creation, but you know where you're trying to control. So how does that hit? Tell me in the comments. How does that hit? Notice how often you try to control what you're creating, the urge to manage it, to predict it, to shape it in advance, or to make it behave in a way that feels safer. And that habit of controlling shows up in your work, in your decisions, and in the way you relate to uncertainty. So it feels like responsibility, but it often creates separation. Let me say that again. It feels like responsibility, right? Like you're being responsible. But what you're actually doing is just choking yourself. You stay focused on oversight rather than engagement, and the process stops responding in the way that you want it to. But if I don't guide it, it will be a mess. That's just a belief, Shannon. You change your beliefs anytime you want. If I don't guide it, it will be a mess. What are you creating by saying that? If your thoughts create your life and you're using the past to create a predictable future, will you ever change? But if I don't guide it, it will be a mess. You are saying you have to be in control, otherwise it's a mess. That's what you're creating for yourself. So it's just a matter of discrediting that thought and staying in the process of creation rather than trying to control it. Royce, this is my constant struggle, but then you knew that, but I'm working on it. Yeah. Creation does not require control. It requires presence. And that tension begins to ease because you're no longer trying to hold everything in place. Shannon, you're the best. Once you see where control has been operating, now you're aware of it, right? You can feel the difference immediately, and you can begin to discredit it and become somebody new. If we're using the past to create a predictable future, we will never change. And that process begins to support you again and again and again and again and again. Yes? So I want to take a minute and I want to talk to you and introduce you to my podcast partners. And I'm so grateful to these partners because, number one, they continually show up. They show up for themselves, they show up for their businesses, and they show up for me. And I'm just really, really glad to be able to promote these people. And so my first is Tendril and Thistle. And I really, really think that you should go to the website and really take some time to look at her products because they are so beautiful. And it is a way to let yourself slow down, right? And take care of yourself. So Tendril and Thistle invites you to slow down just for a moment, really, just for that moment, and reconnect with yourself. Every self-care invitation is a small act of restoration, crafted with comforting, handcrafted, pure essential oil blends, which, by the way, I love. They smell so good, and naturally derived ingredients to meet you right where you are. So whether you're beginning your day, pausing for breath, which is so, so important, tending to your body, or unwinding into rest, these simple, mindful moments remind you that care doesn't need to be elaborate to be meaningful. And this is what I talk about all the time. If we can just take, 2 seconds to be good to ourselves, it's so important. So if you use code MindBody10 at tendrilandthistle.com/pages/the-invitations, code MindBody10, you get a 10% discount just for being a listener of the Mind Body Business Podcast. And next, and I don't have like an official script for this, but it's Royce Cycle decoupage papers. And Royce, we didn't chat about this too much as to where you want me to send everybody. So if you're here and you want to put a link in the comments, and we'll figure out later. But Royce, I've known Royce since 2017, and I was, really lucky enough to be one of the first people to be using her decoupage papers. And then I was a retailer for years until I shut all that down and changed my whole life. But I still love using her papers to create with. And not only does she have papers, but she has stencils. And I'm so grateful to be a co-creator with Royce at her upcoming retreat. And the retreat is April 22nd. Am I saying that right, Royce? I'm going right off the top of my head. No, it's the 24th because I'm flying in, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so if you have not been, Royce did her first big retreat last year, and I was, again, so grateful to be co-creating that with her. That'd be amazing, Royce. If you've not been to her retreat, there is still space left for this year. It is in April in Safford, Arizona. So if you're, from the Midwest or, the East Coast, it's warm there. Because sometimes in April it's still winter, right? So Royce, is there a direct link for the retreat? You could put that into, that would be amazing. But I'm so excited to be doing transformational art journaling. I'm going to be doing meditations. I even get to play on a gel plate there. There is the retreat right there, the 2026 Roy Cycled Retreat. Ooh, I'm so excited. And Royce is actually going to be on the podcast with me really soon so that we can chat about what's happening there in more detail. And then lastly, the Little Sparrow Collective. Oh, it's so near and dear to my heart. It's an online home for art lovers and creative souls alike. And it's a curated group of independent artists and crafters offering original art, handmade jewelry, creative gifts, and one-of-a-kind pieces you won't find anywhere else. So if you love to support real artists, discovering pieces with personality, and bringing more creativity into your every life, because there's so many fun art kits on there, Little Sparrow is for you. It's thelittlesparrowcollective.com. And again, we get to use code MindBody10 for 10% off. I'm so excited for the retreat too. I really am. I'll tell you, the group of people that Royce brings together is really second to none. It was a beautiful experience, and I know it's going to be that way this year too as well. So there's a link for Little Sparrow. Thank you for being here. For me, I think that my frustration and my own creativity lies when I do overthink and when I try to force and when I sit in that valley of bewilderment and when I let myself be at the bottom of the black hole. And when I don't feel that, like anxiety and pressure, is when I am in the present moment, in the process of creation itself. So I'm grateful that you're here. And I will be here again next week, Monday. You can always watch the replay on my new YouTube channel, which I will throw the link in here later on. And I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for being here.